Hello there, this is L24 World News, and coming up next in our news program. A truce between Zionist and Palestinian Islamic Jihad militant group was announced late on Sunday, raising hopes that the worst eruption on the Gaza border in more than a year would come to an end. The rebel groups and Chad's transitional government signed a peace agreement in Doha after months of negotiations in the capital of Qatar. After the second caravan of ships of Istanbul was carefully inspected on Sunday, efforts to transport Ukrainian grain to foreign markets via the Black Sea accelerated. US Senate passed on Sunday a $430 billion climate change, healthcare and tax bill after Vice President Kamala Harris voted in favor of the Democrats to break a tie against Republican opposition on Saturday. Hello again and welcome. I'm your host, Abdulrahim Kachor, and those were today's top stories. First, in our topical news, a truce between the Zionists and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad group was announced late on Sunday, raising hopes that the worst eruption on the Gaza border in more than a year would come to an end. According to the Egyptian intelligence officials, a deal had been reached to an end to the violence in Gaza. They called for a ceasefire to start at 11:30 p.m. and committed to work for the release of Sheikh Bassam Assadi and the prisoner Khalil Awouda, while an agreement like that might push Zionists to break the ceasefire as usual.
After the vital Egyptian international efforts, and in light of the Egyptian announcement of the Egyptian commitment to work for the release of Sheikh Bassam Assadi and the prisoner Khalil Awouda, we, the Islamic Jihad movement in Palestine, announced the entry into the ceasefire agreement as of 11:30 in the evening of this Sunday, 7 August 2022, and we confirm that we will abide by the ceasefire as long as the enemy adhere to it.
Still, with the Palestine ceasefire deal ends the Zionist assault on the Gaza Strip, which has taken at least 45 lives. The shelling in residential areas left as well at least 15 children killed in a 3-day-long bombing and more than 360 wounded. Zionist shelling damaged at least 1,600 Palestinian residential units. Right, let's bring on our report on the fragile truce which was reached between the Islamic Jihad group and the Zionist entity. The aforementioned entered into effect on Sunday at 8:30 p.m. after Zionist aggression on the Gaza Strip that lasted for 3 days resulted in the martyrdom and the death of at least 45 Palestinians, including children. Hussein Berkan.
A shaky truce came into effect between the Palestinian group Islamic Jihad and the Zionists. After 3 days of Zionist strikes on civilians in Gaza that claimed the lives of 44 Palestinians. Until the last minute before the start of the truce, obtained thanks to the Egyptian mediation, the Zionist army carried out strikes on Islamic Jihad positions in Gaza as it claims, murdering with cold blood 15 kids and 4 old women. Lin Matar, Gaza 9-year-old girl who was rescued from between the rubble, described the horrific scenes of the Zionist inhumane hostilities.
I was at my grandfather's house when suddenly the rubble started to fall on us, and we started screaming and the neighbors came to rescue us. I was saying the last prayers. I didn't expect to live. I didn't expect to live until the moment they rescued me.
Palestinians in Jabalia refugee camp, who were the most affected by the Zionist and provoked and illegal strikes, north of Gaza City, celebrated the truce.
احنا نتمنى انه ما يصير عندنا حروب.
We hope we don't have wars. We are human beings and we have the right to live our lives in Gaza. We don't want wars every year or every other day. We still haven't recovered of the previous war.
لسه احنا ما طبناش من الحرب اللي فاتت.
بدك الصراحة من ناحية الخوف ما في واحد.
Everyone lived in fear. If we weren't afraid of strikes and missiles, we were worried about our fathers, mothers, brothers and neighbors.
على أمك على أبوك على جارك.
Fuel trucks entered the Gaza Strip on Monday morning after the start of the truce. Trucks of fuel crossed the southern Gaza Strip to fill its only power plant that was shut down due to the fuel shortage. This truce comes as the Zionist Prime Minister Yair Lapid said that the objectives of the military operation in Gaza, as he describes, have been achieved, and there is no point in continuing it. The operation that resulted in the killing of innocent civilians and the destruction of important infrastructure in the Gaza Strip that has been living under illegal blockade for decades.
Still with the Palestine fight, the leader of Islamic Jihad in Palestine said that the group was strong and more stable after truce with the Zionist entity was declared on Sunday following 3 days of clashes. The group's leader Ziad al-Nakhala stated that Zionist forces had aimed to break Islamic Jihad, but they didn't do so, adding that the group had become more powerful.
The
Zionist enemy had a clear and specific slogan, which is the annihilation of the Islamic Jihad movement and its military wing, Al-Quds Brigades. Today, after the clashes stopped and the fire stopped, we saw a clear scene. The Islamic Jihad movement is still strong and stable and even more powerful.
And for more updates over the situation in Gaza, I'm joined by Mohammed Al-Amin Al-Hadidi, a Palestinian activist from Gaza. Mr. Mohammed Al-Amin, how is the situation on the ground right now after the implementation of the ceasefire? What can you tell us?
First, I would like to thank you for hosting me, and thank you for your television for your response to covering the situation in Gaza. Late of Sunday evening, it was announced that the ceasefire agreement between the Israel and Islamic Jihad in Gaza took effect and the price for the efforts of Egypt and Qatar to stop the Israeli aggression. At 11:30 Palestinian time, the truce took effect 3 days after the Israeli aggression on Gaza and the fall of Islamic Jihad rockets and various Israeli cities. A ceasefire.
Mr. Mohammed.
And Qatar with both sides. As for the term of the agreement between Islamic Jihad and Israel, the agent released to the prisoner Bassam Assad and the prisoner allowed reducing the siege and opening the Gaza crossing, entering the fuel for the power station. But all of these provisions remain to be applied with an Egypt guarantee as the Israeli army through a number of its statement to reject this, and the coming hours will reveal this matter. An Egyptian security delegation arrived now this morning to Israel to ensure that implementation of what was agreed upon the ceasefire. There were rallies in Gaza City and Jabalia camp to celebrate the entry into force of the ceasefire, and participants carried the Palestinian flags and banners of the Islamic Jihad and pictures for the leaders. They was killed in the last aggressions. Life gradually returned to the streets of the Gaza Strip, and government, private educational institution and shops opened these doors since this morning. On the other hand, U.S. President Joe Biden said that he supports an investigation into the killing of civilians in the Gaza Strip. Today, the humanitarian coordinator in the occupied Palestinian Territory, Lynn Hastings, arrived in the Gaza Strip from the Beit Hanun crossing in the northern Gaza Strip. In the first international reaction, the UN envoy in the Middle East tour Westland welcomed the ceasefire and praised role of Qatar and Egypt and the American role. The United Nations Security General Antonio Guterres welcomed the announcement of the ceasefire in Gaza and Israel. They commend Egypt for its effort in close coordination with the United Nations to help restore calm.
Mr. Mohammed, I'm sorry to cut your train of thought, but coming to the second point, the attack on the Gaza Strip affected the largest healthcare and complex in Gaza, that the needs to be completed and fulfilled again, it will take more than 3 days, as they have stated. So people in Gaza, how will they deal with the matters in these 3 days? There is no enough medicine, no electricity.
Yeah, according to the agreement, the Beit Hanun crossing will be open for the movement of people, and Karm Salem crossing will be opened for the entry of goods and diesel needed to operate the power station, which has stopped working due to the lack of fuel. The Israeli government announced the opening of the crossing between Israel and the Gaza Strip of humanitarian cases starting at 9 o'clock this morning. The power station stopped working last Saturday due to the running out of fuel, and today 30 trucks loaded with the fuel are scheduled to enter to operate the station. Often the ceasefire, the real suffering of the people of Gaza appears when they start paying attention to the wounded, most of whom have had their hands and feet amputated. Many houses were completely destroyed by the bombing of the Israeli war planes. Since 2007, Gaza has been suffering from blockade that has affected all aspects of life, including foods, crossing and fuel, electricity, and the other basic requirements. There was increase the suffering of the Palestinian people in Gaza. Yesterday, Palestinian Prime Minister Mahmoud Shtaya, he said he will do everything necessary to provide health support to the Gaza Strip, and the Ministry of Health has started its contacts for the purpose. And he said we communicate with the United Nations and the Red Cross, and in coordination with Egypt, we will use the Rafah crossing to bring aid into the Gaza Strip.
Quite understood, Mr. Mohammed Amin Al-Hadidi from Gaza. Thank you ever so much for this analysis. Now to other topical news. Now, Malian Foreign Minister Diop, upon his reception on Sunday evening by his Algerian counterpart Ramtan Lamamra, praised Algeria's efforts to resolve the crisis in Mali and praised its role in accelerating the implementation of the peace and reconciliation agreement oriented from the Algeria's initiative. The talks between the two officials focused on strengthening brotherhood and cooperation relations between the two countries. Algeria praised the commitment of the Malian authorities and the movements that signed the peace and reconciliation agreement in Mali.
We are pleased with the interest and importance that Algeria and President Abdelmadjid Tebboune give to Mali, also with the relationships between Mali and Algeria, which is the factor to spread peace, stability in the region.
In a different development in Mali, still 5 people, officers, were killed Sunday by undefined assailants in southern Mali. The national police said that's why the Malian army claimed to be repelling the separate attack by terrorists in the northeast. The Directorate General of the National Police said in a statement that a team from the Sona Frontier Police Station struck the explosive device followed by heavy fire from as yet unidentified attacks. seen in Africa prior to a significant national reconciliation dialogue later this month. The rebel groups and Chad's transitional government signed a peace agreement on August 8 in Doha. More than 30 rebel groups participated in the signing ceremony for the agreement, which was the result of months of negotiations in the capital of Qatar, and include the parties' commitment to take part in a national inclusive dialogue. Meanwhile, the interim military government's foreign minister Mohammed Zain Sharif claimed that the agreement would result in long-lasting peace in Chad.
It is important is the result which we got at the end of this long process. And I think that this agreement will lead us to a sustainable peace in Chad. And this agreement allowed to all these armed groups which signed this agreement to take part to the national inclusive dialogue.
To America now, the U.S. Senate passed on Sunday a $430 billion climate change, healthcare, and tax bill after Vice President Kamala Harris voted in favor of the Democrats to break a tie against Republicans' opposition on Saturday. The package, called the Inflation Reduction Act, will earmark $430 billion in new spending, along with raising more than $700 billion in new revenues.
Our bill reduces inflation, lowers costs, creates millions of manufacturing jobs, enhances our energy security, and is the boldest climate package in U.S. history. The Senate has now passed the most significant bill to fight the climate crisis ever.
As part of its military response to U.S. House Speaker's visit to Taiwan, Chinese Army of Liberation announced that its troops are continuing the military drills around Taiwan. The drills are scheduled to expand to the southern part of Bohai and Yellow Seas. Osama Ayadi.
China has wrapped up its unprecedented 4 days of drill that showcased Beijing's military determination to challenge what it called any attempt to separate Taiwan from China after the controversial visit of the U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to Taipei. China announced Sunday that it will conduct live-fire military exercises on the Yellow and Bohai Seas, and the drills will be held between the months of August and September. Beijing launched massive military exercises surrounding Taiwan earlier this week after U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited what the U.S. considers self-ruled island back in Chinese warnings. The United States has condemned China's military drills around Taiwan and described it as irresponsible and provocative.
We condemn these actions, which are irresponsible and at odds with our long-standing goal of maintaining peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait and in the region.
Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong and her Latvian counterpart Edgars Rinkevics have called for restraint and de-escalation in the Taiwan Strait.
Australia continues to urge restraint. Australia continues to urge de-escalation, and this is not, something that solely Australia is calling for. And the whole region is concerned about the current situation. The whole region is calling for stability to be restored.
Taiwan's defense ministry said it had detected 66 Chinese Air Force planes and 14 Chinese warships conducting activities in and around the Taiwan Strait on Sunday.
In Latin America, Colombia's first leftist president will soar into office Sunday, promising to fight inequality and heralding a turning point in the history of Colombia. Sofian Kanchori tackled the story in this report.
Sunday witnessed the inauguration of Colombia's first leftist president, who pledged to combat inequality and marked a turning point in the history of a nation still plagued by protracted conflict between the military and guerrilla groups. Standing beside Simon Bolivar's sword, President Gustavo Petro delivered his inaugural address.
Colombians have many times in our history been sentenced to achieve the impossible, to the lack of opportunities. I want to tell all Colombians listening at Bolivar Plaza, its surroundings, and all of Colombia and abroad, that today our second opportunity begins.
Petro, a former member of Colombia's M19 guerrilla group, won the presidential election in June by beating conservative parties that offered moderate changes to the market-friendly economy.
We are owners of hope. Our role, we can write it together, with peace and unity. The Colombia of what's possible starts today. We are here against all predictions and against a story that said we would never govern against those who didn't want to let go of power. But we did it.
Tens of thousands of city residents without invitations to the main event were able to participate in the celebration thanks to stages with live music and large screens that were set up throughout the parks of Bogota. That represented a significant shift for Colombia, where previous presidential inaugurations were more somber events limited to a few hundred VIP guests.
To the Russia-Ukraine fight now, after the second caravan of ships of Istanbul was thoroughly inspected on Sunday, efforts to transport Ukrainian goods to foreign markets via the Black Sea accelerated. The three recently arrived ships, which were carrying a combined 58,000 tons of grain, were examined by a team of Joint Coordination Center members. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Sunday that if Russia proceeds with referendums in occupied areas of his country on joining Russia, there could be no talks with Ukraine or its international allies. Let's have a listen.
The position of our state remains the same as it was before. We will not give anything of ours. And when the occupiers follow the path of these pseudo-referendums, they will close for themselves any possibility of negotiations with Ukraine and the free world, which the Russian side would definitely need at a certain moment.
United Nations Security General Antonio Guterres said on Monday in Japan that the risk of nuclear confrontation had returned after decades, calling on nuclear states to commit to no first use of the weapons.
Any attack to a nuclear plant is a suicidal thing, and I hope that those attacks will end. And at the same time, I hope that the IAEA will be able to have access to the plant and to exercise its mandate competencies.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken and South African Foreign Minister Nel Pandur opened the U.S.-South African strategic dialogue in Pretoria on Monday. Blinken's visit to Africa is seen as part of competition between Russia and Western powers for support from African countries over the conflict in Ukraine. Blinken's trip to South Africa is his first stop on a three-nation tour that will include Congo and Rwanda.
We're profoundly joined and connected in, I think, a basic outlook as two great constitutional democracies with a shared set of values. But to your point, we bring different perspectives on some issues. And I have to tell you, as a result of our many conversations, you've helped me rethink things and look at things in a different light. And I'm really grateful for that.
To a different story, children have found a mine in the sea while catching sea snails in the Bulgarian resort town of Tasarevo. The place where the explosive shell was found has been fenced off. People at the same time continue to swim in other parts of the beach. U.S. President Joe Biden on Sunday left the White House for the first time since becoming infected with COVID-19 last month and in his most recent isolation after testing positive. The president tested negative Saturday and Sunday, according to his doctor, clearing the way for him to emerge from an isolation that lasted longer than expected because of a rebound case of the virus. At least one person was killed and 122 injured in a major fire that broke out following a series of explosions at a fuel storage facility in Cuba. The Ministry of Public Health said that Sunday. It added that 16 others are still missing in the accident. Cuba sought to bring under control the fire at its main oil storage facility, relying on help from Mexico and Venezuela to fight the raging flames.
The aid has been offered in a prompt and timely manner. Immediately, the President of Mexico, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, and the President of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, contacted Cuba. They expressed their readiness to help without taking into account any conditions, without taking into account any delays.
Hong Kong will reduce the mandatory hotel quarantine for overseas arrival to 3 days from week. The southern Chinese city remains one of the few places in the world, together with mainland China, to require a quarantine to guard against travelers spreading COVID-19 to the local population. The policy taking effect Friday will be Hong Kong's shortest quarantine for arrivals since the pandemic began. Natalia Popova has found a new purpose in life, rescuing wild animals and pets from devastation war in Ukraine. More in this report.
At the Ukrainian animal shelter have devoted their time to evacuating animals since Russia started its military operation.
Now when I pick up animals, most of the lions have been abandoned. The owners left because of bombardment. Everything is being demolished, and the animals were abandoned. We are approached by the military, who find them and ask to take them away, because they feel pity. The military help us drive into these hotspots, we pick them up. All in all, they have no story. We don't even know whose animal this is.
In cooperation with the Animal Protection Organization, rescuers of wild animals have already saved more than 300 animals from war. 200 were taken abroad, and 100 found homes in western region of Ukraine, which are considered to be safer.
During the war, we have already transported more than 300 animals. More than 200 of them have already been evacuated to Europe.
Rescued from hotspots where active hostilities occur, most of animals are now waiting to be evacuated to Poland. Their transportation mission, however, can be dangerous for Natalia Popova in the absence of experts. Most of the animals she rescues are from private homes, abandoned by their owners. Popova rehabilitates animals in her Kiev shelter before they're rehomed.
Of course it's scary. Of course it's dangerous. Of course I had to learn a lot of professions because not a single veterinarian would go to the front line. Therefore I had to learn how to do anesthesia myself. Because animals such as lions, tigers, bears, when they are under stress, it is impossible to take them away.
The Poznań Zoo in Poland helps her evacuate the animals and find suitable homes for them. Some of the evacuated animals have already found new homes in Spain, France and South Africa.
To this minute, that's all we have on our news, and let's have a reminder of our main top stories. A truce between Zionists and Palestinian Islamic Jihad militant group was announced late on Sunday, raising hopes that the worst eruption on the Gaza border in more than a year would come to an end. The rebel groups and Chad's transitional government signed a peace agreement in Doha after months of negotiations in the capital of Qatar. After the second caravan of ships of Istanbul was carefully inspected on Sunday, efforts to transport Ukrainian grain to foreign markets via the Black Sea accelerated. U.S. Senate passed on Sunday a $403 billion climate change, healthcare and tax bill after Vice President Kamala Harris voted in favor of the Democrats to break a tie against Republicans. To To this point, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of our program. For more updates, follow us on our social media platform, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and even YouTube. Thank you for watching. Have a blessed day.